Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. We've done a few episodes on the proposed curriculum draft that the UCP is currently piloting in a very small number of schools, mostly because school boards across the province have rejected it as being not only factually incorrect, against current teaching standards, but straight up harmful to kids. Now, we've done a few episodes where we've talked to academics and experts on curriculum development, but we wanted to go a little bit deeper. So we reached out to a few folks from the Albertans Reject the Curriculum Draft Facebook page, and we sat down with them in a series of interviews with three different people where we talked about their concerns, not just as people who are advocating for a quality curriculum for kids, but as parents and as small business owners who are concerned about what this curriculum will do to the employability of Albertans who are growing up through the school system right now. We're going to present those interviews over the next week and a half, but we're going to start off with an interview from a gentleman named Dustin Archibald. Dustin is one of the administrators of the Facebook group, and he's somebody who not only runs a small business, but he has kids who are going to potentially be experiencing this proposed curriculum. We're very grateful that Dustin took the time to sit down and chat with us, and this is our conversation with Dustin Archibald. Who is Dustin Archibald? What's kind of your story? Why do you have a dog in the fight of the curriculum situation?
Well, I'm a parent of a kid. He's in grade 3 right now, so he's right in the middle of where this whole thing will be going on. And when I heard about the curriculum, I thought, when the UCP first came out with it, I thought I'll take a look. I read through kindergarten and I thought, oh my God, if this is going to be the way the rest of the curriculum is, I don't see how it's going to be feasible for for my son, to be educated properly. So I went through the whole thing front to back, and it was worse than I had originally thought. And so I thought, well, you know what, this can't stand. The UCP really doesn't know what is going on here. Besides being a parent, I'm also a business owner. So as a business owner, I'm able to look and see, well, what kind of people do I eventually want working for me? I want people who are able to make creative decisions, to be able to analyze situations, to be able to think beyond what's in front of their faces. And, as a business owner right now, it's hard to get people like that. Post oil boom, I think it'll be much worse having people who are not educated in any of these areas. And when we're looking at the curriculum, there's no way that anybody can learn anything besides memorizing facts, if they can do that at all. So when I took all these into account, I said, you know what, this just can't stand, and I have to do something about it. And luckily, there are quite a lot of people who feel the same way as I do. And that's not just me and a few other people trying to push back against this. So when the curriculum, and we use that in quotes, curriculum, came out, I found the Facebook group, joined up, and then it quickly became apparent that everybody there was really on the same page about how bad it was. And there came a call for people to help with graphics and to help with the sign campaign. And what I did is I volunteered. I have a background in graphic design, so I volunteered to help with some graphics, and essentially became the lead designer for the sign campaign. And from there, I took on further roles as being a moderator for the groups, so we can make sure we have relevant content and people not getting into too many fights over things, because it is quite a passionate group there. And from there, I kind of migrated into helping with the administrative side of things and helping steer the group in the direction we wanted it to go. And we paired up with SOS, support our students, and we're working collaboratively with them to kind of help raise the message and raise awareness about this issue.
Yeah, it's the history of the group. I can't claim to be super familiar with, but it's got a pretty big footprint. You've got upwards of 40,000 people who have signed up to join the group. Albertans reject the curriculum draft, and that's not a small number.
No, it's not a small number, and those are only Facebook users, right? There are quite a lot of people in Alberta who aren't on social media as much as the rest of us. You know, they do other things. And so we have 40, almost 41,000 people now, and there are still more joining every day. And we're trying to get the word out in as many ways as possible about the curriculum to as many people as we can before it comes into effect in 2022. Um, Many people don't realize that the UCP is basically trying to push this through without any resistance. They're going ahead with piloting it, even though the majority, quite a lot, I think it's 56 out of 61 school boards have said, no, we don't want this for whatever reason. They're still trying to push it through. There's only around 360 students who are piloting it. From our perspective, that's even 360 too many because it's going to put a bad effect on their education. Um, it's all in all, we just don't believe in this curriculum at all.
Okay. We've had a couple of conversations on the show here with Dr. Carla Peck where we've talked about sort of the high level, what are the problems functionally with the curriculum, and you've kind of alluded to that a little bit where you talked a bit about the fact that it seems to be very much focused more on memorization than the kids actually learning how to think, for lack of a better term. And it also has some pretty staggering factual errors. But I'm curious, what are sort of, I mean, you said you have a parent, you are a parent, you have a kid who is in grade 3. What are your biggest concerns with the curriculum specifically?
Well, specifically, other than that, the whole thing is a mess. I really want my son to have a good time in school. Don't mean that it's a party time and everybody should do whatever they want in school. But what I mean is, if if my son is to learn anything, he better enjoy doing it. And you know, coming from when I was in elementary school, there was a lot of memorization in the social studies too, specifically, and that isn't exactly fun. You don't really learn anything when you get to a test. You might, you know, you might get an A on it, but then come around next week and then you're asked, well, what is this about? You won't be able to remember it. And you know, having a fun time in school is really important to learning. It is for anything to be able to learn, you need to be able to have a good time doing it. And the UCP seems to have taken the opposite track on this one, saying, well, let's cram a bunch of knowledge into your head. We'll call it something. We don't know what it is, but we'll cram the knowledge in and we'll see what comes out of it. And really, to me, that's just a waste of time. It's one of those things that really, why would you want to send a child to have to deal with that? It's just nonsensical.
Now, in our conversations with Dr. Pack, we focused almost entirely on the social studies curriculum, and certainly that's where the most glaring wrong things are. But I'm curious, do you have any concerns outside of the social studies curriculum?
Yeah, for example, I am a computer programmer. So I've been programming since around 1997. And the idea that you can teach people to program to code without anything besides pen and paper is ridiculous. It is, I have no idea where the education minister came up with this idea that we can just use pen and paper and the kids will learn how to program. Uh, when I was doing this, and of course at the time I was just out of high school, I was in college. We did pen and paper programming, but We also, right after that, we had something called computers that we decided to do programming on. We actually got to learn what we were doing. Now you fast forward 20 or 30 years, and the education minister expects that we should be doing less than that, which is not possible. And when you're dealing with children, when you're educating children, simply sitting down, having them write something on a on a piece of paper and say, there you go, you just programmed, it's not going to work. My son did over the summer, he did a programming camp with the TELUS World of Science, and he did it remotely. And he built a game where he had a house eat cars, and then he collected points, and he did this all kind of stuff. And he loved it because he got to make this ridiculous house chomp down on these cars. And he didn't do any writing on paper with it, and yet he learned the basics of coding. There's this thing where you can drag and drop blocks of code. It's called the block-based coding, and it's in the curriculum, but the education minister doesn't seem to know that it's in there. It's been recommended that the students learn block-based coding, but when asked about it, she said, no, we'll just run on pen and paper, and we're not going to provide any more resources, or otherwise, to be able to support this learning. The other part about it is a lot of the content taken for kindergarten to grade 6 is taken from some United States university level courses. It's actually, they didn't get permission for it, it's been plagiarized from sites that you can go and you can find exactly word for word what's been said has been put into this K-6 curriculum. To me, that doesn't speak about anybody who knows anything about teaching computers or computer programming to children. It just seems that someone said, oh, you want computer programming in your curriculum? Let's just find something and throw it in there. And to me, that doesn't speak of anything worthwhile for children to learn.
What would you like to see happen with the curriculum? There's been a lot of different proposals that have kind of been floated out there, but the consensus seems to be that the product that the UCP have produced needs to be, as Dr. Peck put it in our last conversation, put back into the shredder, and the whole process needs to be started again. Where do you stand on that?
There have been a lot of proposals saying we can take we can fix a few things, we can take what's good and then kind of massage it into something that's better. From my perspective, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig when you're all done with it, right?
But prettier.
It's prettier and it looks better, but it's not going to be anything worthwhile. And there are so many things wrong across the board, not just with social studies, not just with the computer programming side of it. The music is just a travesty. I think someone tallied it up to being around 100 errors in the curriculum, not just it could be one or another, but actual factual errors. So from my perspective and the perspective of the group, we really need to take this one, scrap it, and go back to a true consultation about how the curriculum needs to be done. Take the politics out of it, take the UCP campaign promises out of it, of scrapping it, and really focus on what students need, not as a political game or anything like that.
And that's one thing that I think is worth highlighting about the group that you're an admin for, is that it is not, I mean, I was reading through the rules, and it is explicitly not an anti-UCP group. It's a what the hell is going on with the curriculum, to the point where the rules in your group say that any explicitly political posts will just be removed, because the concern for, if I'm reading it right, the concern from your group is purely that you want to see the best curriculum possible for our kids. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, that's right. When the group was first made, it was one of the founding principles was that this isn't going to be a political group. It's not going to be like a UCP bashing group, because the the education, the curriculum goes beyond any kind of political leanings we might have. So when we're looking at posts, when we're doing administration of posts, when we're allowing new posts, we look to see, is this going to cause a lot of people to be upset because it's like a UCP bashing post? And that's not what we're aiming for. And we've had a lot of internal discussions on specific posts to say, is this going to cause a lot of problems? Um, is this post going to be inflammatory in any way? And we try to regulate that and make sure that those don't really come out, because when it comes down to it, we really want to make sure that everybody is able to voice their opinions and be able to come out of this without a political slant.
It almost sounds like it would be nice if the education minister utilized the same sort of consultation that you're doing within your Facebook group.
It would be nice. I don't know what the education minister is doing. I'm not involved on that side of it. Um, but it seems to me that there's some sort of alternative agenda that goes beyond a campaign promise. I mean, campaign promises are broken all the time in politics. We all know that. But for some reason, this one specifically is being pushed through. And if the education minister would take some time to look at the comments in the group, to recognize that no, this isn't just a bunch of UCP bashers, that it's not just about teachers who are mad about not being consulted, that there are parents in here, there are business owners, there are citizens who aren't parents, who all agree that everything needs to be stopped and scrapped. I mean, my MLA, who is Tracy Allard, she wrote quite a detailed letter after consultation with me and a bunch of other people, saying we need to slow down. It stopped short of saying this needs to be trashed, which I was hoping she would say, but that's not something I think she would say. But she did say it needs to be slowed down. So any UCP MLA, any NDP MLA is welcome to jump into the group and just read through what's going on and recognize that no, this isn't just a select few people who are concerned about this. This is actually a large number of people who represent an even larger number of people who have concerns with it.
You bring up the point that you were able to have a conversation with Tracy Allard, and she did write a letter calling for a sober second approach to the consultation process or to the curriculum process at the very least. Have you had any communication at all with Education Minister Adriana LaGrange? Has she reached out to you or any members of the admin team? Because I think you make an excellent point. You've got a group that has 41,000 people who are members, and of that really does represent the most engaged people that you're going to be looking at. I mean, these are people who are specifically on Facebook. These are people who specifically care enough to find the group, and there's a boatload of people who don't like Facebook anymore these days, and there's a boatload of people who are very concerned about the issue, but maybe don't have the bandwidth to seek out and find your group. So have you heard anything from, or has anyone with your group heard anything from Adriana LaGrange?
No, not to my knowledge, and it's quite unsettling that we haven't. We haven't even heard anything from the minister's office about talking about it. Nothing has come through. The most that we have is individual people saying that they're going to be part of the meetings with the education minister where she does her sessions. But other than that, no, we haven't been contacted with it. And
have you guys made any effort to contact her as the entity or the group?
yes, we've made contact. We've sent off emails with our concerns about the draft. But So far, we've only received form letters that come back saying this is a collaborative process. This is just a draft. Basically saying, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it.
What are sort of the next moves for the Facebook group? Is there I mean, I guess I'll just be really blunt. Is there a plan of any kind to get further exposure and to get more people aware and engaged with applying pressure?
Right now, we are focused on making sure we're getting the word out effectively. We are working on, besides social media, traditional media. We've been working with some groups within the Facebook group with other volunteers, looking to see how we can better apply pressure um, through advertising. We are trying to get people to arrange their own advocacy. So a lot of times people come through our group, they find other people within their area, and then they arrange protests or the like. So we're focused on that for the moment. Our biggest call to action right now is for people to continue writing their MLAs, whether they're UCP or NDP. It doesn't really matter to us as long as we get the word out that way, to email or send letters to the Premier and to the Education Minister voicing these concerns, and as well to school board trustees. We have pretty much a lot of new trustees who've come in, and we need to get them to reiterate their stance on the curriculum. So all these together, we're hoping will help keep this idea in the forefront, and we'll see where everything else goes from there.
Okay. I'd like to get a sense of what your level of optimism is. I mean, one of the conversations that we've had has to do with the fact that there's a lot of people who looked at the equalization referendum as a proxy referendum on Jason Kenney, and there's probably a little bit of truth to that, but because equalization is so poorly understood by so many people, I personally don't believe that it's the greatest example of what would be a referendum on Kenney. What I kind of look at is overwhelmingly across the entire province, we saw school board trustees who were openly campaigning against the curriculum get elected into office. And I think that in and of itself speaks much more highly and much more effectively around the lack of confidence that people seem to have in Mr. Kenney or Adriana LaGrange or their ability to provide a quality curriculum. So I'm just curious, like, given that major shift and given the fact that that was such an open part of the conversation in the municipal elections, what kind of optimism do you have? Give me a sense.
Well, from my perspective, the the best way to to make sure that this curriculum doesn't go through is for the education minister to see that her position as MLA is at risk if she continues to push it through. Um, that means getting people to really stand up with their advocacy, with their meetings, in their letters, and say, you know what, if you keep up with this, I'm not going to vote for you. I'm not going to vote for the UCP because you don't have my trust that you will look after my child's education properly. Just from what we've seen in the past with the UCP, when it comes to education, they're not budging on it very much. They're not saying, okay, how about we do true consultation? They haven't gone that route. They've doubled down on it. When it comes down to doing these information sessions, people have put in their questions quite directed comments, and they're rephrased to be what the UCP talking points are. UCP MLAs, when they're asked questions, they revert to their scripted answers. So to me, it doesn't seem that that the education minister, that the premier are wanting to take a collaborative approach to this. They have some sort of agenda and they want to see it pushed through. So for the people who are watching and the people who are very interested in this, it will take, I think, a hard line on this issue to say to the UCP that we're not going to stand here and take it. It's time to stand up for our kids, stand up for their education, and say, if you're not going to change this, you're not going to have a job the next election come through.
Now, would you like obviously the part of the message is right often, and I think that that's particularly important given that we know Adriana Lagrange has some memory issues. She has disclosed as much to the ethics commissioner in the whole mask scandal. But would you encourage people like? I guess what I'm kind of wondering is like, should people be including in these letters things to the effect, not just saying, "Hey, I'm really worried about the curriculum. Hey, you need to fix this or you won't have a job." Should people be saying, "Look, I live in Calgary or Edmonton or wherever, and if you don't start listening to us, I'm going to come to your constituency and campaign against you." Is that part of the narrative that needs to be included, do you think?
I think so. Yes, I think there needs to be um, more visible activity, right? The UCP does start to cave when it comes to a public display of a big public display, and that's why we had the sign campaign, because we know that these visual displays of protesting, so to speak, do have an effect. And to be able to say, I'm going to go to your office and I'm going to voice my concerns, um, legally, of course, and not in any kind of violent way, but to say, I'm going to go there. I think it could help, making sure that to stay visible, to stay loud, is a vital part of making sure that this curriculum doesn't get put through.
Okay. Now, the last sort of question, and I always say last question, and then there's two more. But the last question that I have on my mind right now, you've talked a couple of times about the fact that you kind of came to the group because of the sign design, and you've also talked about the fact that you have this sign campaign. Is that campaign still ongoing? And if so, where do people go to get these signs?
The campaign is still ongoing. I think we had around, the last check was around 2,600 signs ordered. Um, but since winter's coming along, it's a lot harder to jam those signs into the ground. I believe we're starting to wrap up our deliveries of those at the end of this month. But yes, we're still doing that campaign. Um, it's one of those things that even if you can't put the sign into the ground, it helps us with our advocacy. So ordering a sign, getting a sign, you can put it up in your window even. It definitely helps to get that word out and get that awareness spread. Um, it's we took the lead from other groups who use signs, and for example, the mining on in the Rockies, that raised quite a lot of attention to the issue. And we believe that this sign campaign actually has worked, because we see the signs a lot. We see that because of the signs, people have been asking questions. And when we're dealing with how well the signs have been used, it also I believe, played quite a lot into the new trustees who campaigned against the curriculum draft. If you were to search through the Facebook group, you would find, I would say, 50 to 100 individual posts that were asking who is who's against the draft, and then you have maybe a few hundred more of those individual ones asking for specific trustees against the draft, and then even more of those asking, can we have a list of those against the draft, a list that we can keep track in like a Google Doc. And the group was quite active in that terms for the entire campaign from when it started to when it finished. And that all came about through the first clicks to the Facebook group, through signs, and on beyond.
So where do people get, if somebody does want to put a sign up in their window or staple it to their balcony or whatever the case may be, where do people get those signs from?
They can go to studentsdeservebetter.ca, and there's a link right there. So you click it and you say get a lawn sign.
Perfect. Dustin, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. But before I let you go, is there anything else that you would like people to know or to hear before I let you get back to your day?
Well, the biggest thing that we have to say is this fight isn't done yet. The UCP is still trying to push it through, even though school boards have pretty much unanimously said they don't want to implement this curriculum. The fight isn't done. So continue on writing letters, making sure that trustees, your MLA, the education minister, the premier all know that you're not happy with this, that you want it stopped. That is going to be one of the biggest things that you can do at the moment. If you can, join in the Facebook group, if you haven't already, and see what volunteer opportunities there are to be able to continue with this advocacy. And if you can, advocate in whatever ways that you're able to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your advocacy work on this, Dustin, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. We've got a few other interviews that we're going to be doing with some other members from the group to get some additional perspectives, but I really appreciate you sort of starting everything off and setting the tone and the context for those conversations.
All right, thank you.
Now, like we said at the beginning, this is just the first conversation of 3, and we're going to be releasing the other 2 conversations over the next week and a half. We're breaking things up because each one of the people that we spoke to has unique and important perspectives that we want to make sure that everybody gets the chance to listen to. And quite frankly, if we were to release the whole thing as one big chunk, it would be 3 hours worth of content. And given the weighty nature of what we're talking about, that would just go on for too long. So we want to make sure that it's accessible to everyone. Keep an eye out for those episodes because they're going to be coming out over the next few days. As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here, please consider signing up to be one of our Patreon supporters at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab, because it's through the support of our Patreon supporters that we're able to continue generating the kind of content that we do. Thank you so much for taking your time to listen. Thank you for your support, and stay safe.